Hi, and welcome to another Kontena online meetup. I'm your host, Jussi, working from Kontena headquarters here in Helsinki. Today's topic is about Kontena 1.0 release, and as you probably all know, we released 1.0 release last week on Tuesday. 1.0 is probably the single biggest release that we've had in the Kontena history, and it's like culmination point for the community effort also that's been happening around Kontena for the past year and a half or so. So big thanks also to the community around Kontena. Without you guys, Kontena wouldn't be so great as it is. Today's topic is as said, Kontena 1.0 release and the new features that we've been putting into it. In the slides, I'll share first a kind of quick recap on Kontena platform, just as an overview reminder what Kontena is all about, and then we'll dive into some of the most important features about the Kontena 1.0 release. So let's have some slides first, and then of course, as usual, there will be some live demo in the last part of the online session. So first, quick recap on Kontena and what it's all about. So Kontena is really an open source platform to run containerized applications and microservices. It's really built on maximizing the developer happiness, and basically we as a developers are building something that we would like to use ourselves. Kontena itself works basically on any infrastructure, any cloud provider, any data center, your private servers, anywhere. It's really easy to set up and extremely simple to use compared to many other similar solutions on the container orchestration market, so to say. Kontena is really orchestrating your containerized applications across different hosts, which Kontena calls a grid. So what Kontena does, it takes set of nodes that you have and combines those as kind of a large single Docker machine where we can schedule your workloads. The cool thing with Kontena Grid is that all the grid nodes are automatically connected to each other with an overlay network. So it doesn't matter where you run your grid hosts in the grid, and all the containers that are launched within the grid can talk to each other as in local network. We do it by utilizing a networking technology called Weave, and it really allows us or allows you to create nice kind of hybrid solutions where some of your workload is running actually on a cloud, maybe some of your workload is running on private data center, and all services deployed with Kontena can talk to each other really easily. Of course, we do have a built-in service discovery layer. So whatever service or container gets launched in Kontena platform, it gets always DNS addresses. So it's really easy to find your services. Let's say your MySQL database for your WordPress website. It's always easy to find it with DNS name. And then of course, Kontena orchestrates your containers and workload. So it distributes your services across these different hosts and make sure that all the services that are supposed to be running are actually running somewhere in the grid. How we do it on the node level, there's a Kontena agent running on each of the nodes, and as you probably all know already, it's just another container running there on top of Docker, and the agent then configures and sets up everything else that's needed on the node level. Like for example, the overlay networking. You don't have to configure that at all by yourself. The brains of the system is called a Kontena master. So that's the orchestrator logic, so to say, that then instructs all the nodes and all the agents in the grid to take action, to launch new containers and other various things. The master is basically providing a REST API, which then the Kontena CLI controls. And of course you can then utilize the REST API for any other integration, because it's, well, just another REST API, so it's really easy to consume by anything else. Kontena really comes with all batteries included, as you know. So we have a built-in image registry to host your private Docker images. So just one single command to set that up for you. Again, VPN access point for the overlay network. So when you have to do some database maintenance or something similar, you can spin up VPN access point on the overlay network really easily with one single command, and then use any OpenVPN compatible client software to take the connection and then do your maintenance work or whatever is needed. We have a built-in load balancer available. So whenever you scale up your services to have multiple instances of some, let's say, website running, you can put a Kontena load balancer in front of that, and it's automatically always dynamically configured. So whenever you scale your services up and down or change some service configuration, the load balancer gets automatically reconfigured and starts to distribute the load to the new instances, if, let's say, if you're scaling up your service. Whenever Kontena spins up your service and the corresponding containers, we collect the statistics and logs of those containers. So it basically means to you as a developer that you have one single point where you can actually get the information about your services. Kontena doesn't intend to be any Splunk or Elk stack. So if you want to have further analytics on the logs, you then can stream those out from the Kontena master and utilize whatever service you need to analyze your logs. But it eases up your life still, because you have one single point where you actually can stream all the logs out for all your services. All the operations, of course, are authenticated. So in the 0.16 release, we pretty much rewrote all the authentication stuff that we had on Kontena platform. So now it's fully OAuth 2 compliant, which then means that basically you can configure any OAuth 2 compliant provider as the authentication backend for Kontena. Of course, we highly recommend to use Kontena Cloud, as it's readily integrated into Kontena platform, of course. And all the operations that are coming through the REST API on the master, they are always logged in a audit trail log. So you have a clear line of logs to identify that who changed what and when. Kontena also has a built-in secrets management, so you can safely store your database passwords, API keys, SSL certificates, or whatever secrets you have. And Kontena makes sure that while at rest, the data is always encrypted. And then only at the last point where we inject it into the containers, it's opened up. So pretty much we have all the building blocks that you need to successfully run your microservices or any other services as containers. And all the things that you don't really want to build yourself, so that you have more time to work on your actual product or service that you are working on. So that's quick recap on Kontena. So although Kontena has quite a lot of building blocks already, we still figured out few things that's missing there and bundled those into Kontena 1.0 release. So let's take a look what's actually in Kontena 1.0, what's new in Kontena 1.0. Of course, there are quite a lot of bug fixes and other small improvements, but today we're focusing on the major new things. So here's a list of the sort of most important new features or new items that we've been working on. So first and the most important and the biggest change was the introduction of a concept called stack. So stack is basically something that kind of replaces the Kontena app commands on the CLI and moves the app kind of concept into the server side and then manages the state of the stack, which is basically any number of services and manages that on the server side. We've also introduced a publicly served stack registry, so you can easily now share your stack definitions. What we've also been working on is a cloud integration. So we've been building up this Kontena Cloud services, and now the Kontena platform can automatically integrate to the Kontena Cloud side. And thus we are able to provide cool new things like for example, first version of a dashboard for your grid. What we also did in the 1.0 release, we did quite a lot of refactoring work on the networking side. So pretty much not a complete rewrite, but big changes and mostly the biggest change was to move the IP address management to the node level. And then of course, as we are following the semantic versioning principles as much as humanly possible, 1.0 of course means also API freeze. So the Kontena API is really now following the semantic versioning. So we will not do any backwards incompatible changes in the 1.x releases, only adding something and fixing bugs on that side. Okay, let's take a bit closer look on the stacks. Quite typically, we are working nowadays on this microservice architecture where you actually break your monolithic applications into smaller pieces, which then of course means that the single service doesn't really provide much value nowadays anymore. It just implements some, let's say, small part of the overall functionality. And as I mentioned, we had this Kontena app command where you were able to deploy and manage multiple services with one YAML definition. But the problem in the Kontena app command was that the state of the full application was really on the client side only. So the Kontena master actually didn't understand any concept called app. So the CLI was mainly kind of wrapper to actually operate on single individual services on the master side. And then when the app worked only on this sort of a kind of hard-coded YAML, it's not easy to share that across different environments because you didn't actually have many things that you would be able to configure there. If you would be configuring something, you would actually be changing the YAML. So it's not easy to share that as this sort of a ready-to-use definition of some set of services. So these were the things that we set out to kind of solve with the stacks. concept. And the stacks are really something that are used to distribute, deploy, and run any number of services as this sort of a reusable building blocks. What's also in the stacks is ways to actually configure your stack while installing that on Kontena platform. So here's a couple of examples. I'll show some examples also while doing the live demo part. But here's, for example, a WordPress site that you pretty much notice that okay, for the services themselves, the syntax is exactly like it used to be with the Kontena YAML definition. But there are some added sort of metadata in the top part. So you, of course, you describe the name for the stack, and we use this slash separated namespacing as you are familiar with, for example, in Docker Hub for your Docker images already. And we do have also these variables which then make things configurable in the stack. Another example here is the Mongo stack, and pretty much similar things. There are just added metadata, some expose functionality which I'll cover later, and then some variables to automatically generate the MongoDB secret. So the stack YAML is only sort of small additions to the existing Kontena YAML definition. So it's pretty easy to have your existing apps ported into stacks. So as said, it's the same, pretty much the same YAML definition as we've had, just some added metadata. The versioning has to comply with the semantic versioning rules and guidelines. The state of the stack is managed now on the master side, and with the variables we make things configurable within the stack. And also what happens in the deployment phase of a stack, we do a sort of DNS namespacing also. I'll have better examples on that later. So the variables are really something that kind of can alter the behavior of the stack. The values can be actually from many different sources. So currently we are supporting prompting the user. So on the CLI, when you are installing the stack, it might prompt you some password or some other configuration item for the stack. You can use Kontena Vault as I had in the previous example. So automatically, if the value is not yet available in the Kontena Vault, it can be automatically created, like some random string for password or something like that. And then, for example, you can put it back to the vault automatically. You can utilize your local environment variables from the CLI where you actually run the install commands. And there are other sort of enumeration support also. And the Kontena stack also supports kind of simplish if-else logic also within the stack definition. So you could actually define things that, okay, this service is deployed only if this condition is met and those sort of things, which makes them highly configurable and also somewhat dynamic in a sense. What's cool also in the stack space now that each stack, when deployed, gets their actual own subdomain in the Kontena.local kind of high-level domain. So whenever I deploy my Mongo stack, all the services within the Mongo stack are deployed using this something.mongo.thegridname.kontena.local domain name. And what's even better, every service and every container that's spin up within the stack, we automatically configure the DNS searches for the containers. So now all the services within the stack can always resolve the other services within the stack just by using the short names. So that makes the configuration and discovery of your stack internal services rather easy. And then when you want to sort of expose something out of the stack, you can use this keyword called expose in the YAML, and that service, whatever service that is then also added to the sort of grid level DNS. So if I roll back to the MongoDB example, so in here we have a couple of it's not showing actually all, but there are a couple of different services in the Mongo stack, and it's saying that okay, it exposes this peer service from the stack. So now when I deploy it, what I get in the grid level DNS, I get actually a DNS entry called Mongo, which then kind of which is kind of an alias for the peer service within the Mongo stack. It's not really this DNS CNAME alias, because the overlay network DNS doesn't actually support these CNAMEs, but it's nevertheless kind of an alias for that. So it really makes the services be easily discoverable within the stack, and also allows you now to expose things to the grid level DNS also rather easily. So how to then distribute and share your predefined stacks? Because what's been one of the most important things for the kind of success of Docker and the whole container ecosystem is sharing of ready-made things, and that's what we thought also with the stacks, that okay, it would be rather nice to have some way to share ready-made stacks of some services like databases, for example, like the MongoDB I just showed. And sharing is really caring in this whole ecosystem of containers. So what we actually built was a centralized stack registry running on sort of as part of the Kontena Cloud services. And what it really creates you is this capability of easily share your stack. And as I mentioned, we are using this sort of a per user namespacing, as you are familiar already with Docker Hub or GitHub, for example. The same or similar model there. And the typical usage pattern is somewhat similar to when working with Docker images. So you build locally your stack, the YAML file. You can push it into the registry, some version of it, and then of course push new versions of it. And the registry will actually hold all your versions. So you can then pull different versions of a certain stack from the registry. You can of course search some stacks. You can remove the some stack version or the complete stack, and of course you can get some details of any given stack. So pretty much the same sort of a working steps and concepts as working with Docker Hub, for example. So we are not really trying to sort of reinvent the wheel of how to work with this sort of a centralized registries. Couple of words about the cloud integration. As we all know, ready-made cloud services are really sort of key things to have nowadays, because it allows you to focus on your services and your applications. So what we build is the integration from the Kontena platform side to the Kontena Cloud side in the 1.0 release. And the big refactoring exercise of the authentication things, what we did in the 0.16 release, was basically the sort of a founding layer to make this really possible. And what it also then of course enables us to build more of these cloud-based services in our offering to really make the user's life easier in that sense. And as you know, in any software project, the biggest effort always goes to making all the connections between all the different components, and that's now for us a good foundation to start rapidly building new features, for example, to the dashboard. So the 1.0 release for the dashboard is lacks still quite a lot of cool things that could be there, but now we have the sort of foundation to build on, and we can then rapidly build new features on the dashboard side. So currently you can when you sign up into the Kontena Cloud, and then when you spin up new Kontena masters and Kontena platforms, they are pretty much automatically then configured and connected to the Kontena Cloud side, and you can see the sort of quick overview on your grid node dashboard, for example. A couple of words about the network refactoring, why we did it, and what did we do. It's actually not that not something that you would typically even see when operating your services within Kontena. The pretty much only thing that you would see is that the IP addresses are now allocated for the containers in a slightly different manner and from slightly different allocation pool. But what we did on the sort of behind the curtains was that we moved the whole IP address management to the agent side. And as you know, we do have on each of the nodes, we do have an etcd service running. So it was natural choice to use the etcd as the backing store for the IP address management functionality. Because etcd is strongly consistent and highly available by nature. So it was really easy choice for us, and it's readily available, of course. So it means that we didn't have to pull yet another thing onto the node to manage the IP addresses. What this also is it's an enabler, for example, for multiple networks and other functionality, which probably will be in next few releases. So when we have the IP address management now refactored and sort of revamped to really be able to manage multiple different networks, it makes the actual network configuration then more easy for us within Kontena and then of course for the users of Kontena, which would then allow, of course, more stack level sandboxing. For example, we could create automatically a stack network So each of the services within the stack would be actually, or could be deployed on a separated network within the overlay network. But let's see, that's something that's not yet carved in stone, but could be implemented in future. API freeze, as already mentioned, we are following now and have been following quite closely the semantic versioning principles and practices. So now we will not be breaking the API. And of course, minor releases may introduce some new APIs for added functionality. And maybe we deprecate some APIs, but they will be there until the next major new release. What the API freeze also means is that we will, and already is mostly documented, the REST API, and the documentation will be launched in near future to be really online. So it would be then easy to integrate anything that you need to integrate with the Kontena. Now that you have the API documentation available, so you don't have to go and reverse engineer all the API calls that the CLI does, for example. Okay. I think that's enough for about slides. So what I wanted to also show is a couple of simple examples how to work with the stacks. How to work with the stacks on the CLI side. So I'll just resize my window a bit so it's more clear. So what I have already running is a 3-node grid and of course the master also on DigitalOcean. It's running the 1.0 release there, and of course the stack is something that's on the sort of top level Kontena CLI now, of course. And what I can do is, for example, I can list what stacks I've installed into my system. I don't have currently anything, of course. I clean up the environment for the demo. What I can do is I can go to the stack registry. So it's fully now integrated also to the CLI. So I can go and do a search. Let's search, for example, Redis. We should find something. Okay, it seems that there are a couple of different things that match the Redis search. So let's check what this Redis Sentinel is. It sounds pretty cool. Let's see. Let's get the information. So it says that, okay, there's only one available version of it. And it exposes something out of the stack. So, of course, we can then pull the stack. And when you pull it, you actually get the kind of stack YAML. And when you pull it, you can store it on the wrong buttons. You can store it on locally into a file with some other option. Let's forget it. But what's most important then of course is how do you actually install a service from the grid? Okay, let's say that you figured out that, okay, this is something I want to try out. So what you can actually do is you can just install it directly with the CLI. So it automatically installed the Redis Sentinel stack for me. And now when I look on my stack listing, it says that okay, it's installed, it's on the initialized state, because I haven't yet deployed the stack. So what I can do is I can then, of course, I can deploy the Redis Sentinel. And as you know, the first deployment of anything takes somewhat longer than the other deployments, because all the nodes have to now pull all the Redis images and whatever images are there in the stack. So if we now look at the stack itself, so it exposes this load balancer service out of it, and automatically, which the expose does for us, it registers this Redis Sentinel DNS kind of alias on the grid level DNS also. So not only the individual services, but also the sort of exposed kind of alias type of DNS entry. And as you see, for example, in the monitor service configuration, you can see that within the stack, you can always refer with the short names of the services. So it's really easy now to find your service within the stack. Okay, so the stack is now deployed. And then when you do this service listing, what you of course get is this now with the 1.0 release and with the stacks, you have this sort of stack aware name of the service. So the name is now always stacks/service to really identify that okay, for which stack this service belongs to. So as you see, working with the stack is as simple as it was to work with the Kontena app, for example. Plus, of course, the nice thing to have the publicly available registry of known to work stacks. Just quickly on the cloud side. So when you roll into the cloud.kontena.io, what you see on the left side now is this icon for your platforms. So when you open that, it automatically figures out that okay, what are the masters that are connected to the Kontena Cloud? Because when you are using the Kontena Cloud as the authentication provider, the Kontena Cloud side, of course, then knows what are the masters that are connected to the cloud. And then with the WebSocket connections, the cloud UI is able to fetch information from your master. And in the dashboard, you now see that okay, I have the 3 nodes in my cluster. You see the load of the servers. And as you can figure out, my servers are extremely small, too small maybe. They are utilizing some memory. And you see also the disk usage and the public IP address and connection status. So that's pretty much the foundation that on which we can now build more cool features. And you should see in near future dashboards also which show you more that how are your services doing, what's the status of your services, and more functionality on the dashboard side. So I think that actually covers pretty much the sort of biggest new features that we did in Kontena 1.0 release. As said, it was really a biggest single release that we've had in the Kontena history, probably after the first initial release on GitHub. And we couldn't have done it without the support from the community, you. So thanks really much about that. I do have a couple of mandatory slides still, just as a reminder. So we are constantly looking for talented engineers to join our ranks. So if you are interested in working with containers, cloud, and all the cool stuff, check out kontena.io/jobs. There are interesting positions available. And our really mission is to become the #1 container and microservice platform for the developers. And of course, we cannot do it without the continuing support from the community. So report found issues on GitHub. Engage us in any event that you see Kontena people on there. We are always happy to discuss about containers and container orchestration. And of course, to stay up with Kontena, you can find us on the typical social media, Twitter. Of course, the project is fully open source in GitHub. We do have quite a lot of meetup groups around the world, so join those, engage us there. Our website had some facelift also for the 1.0 release, and of course we are constantly improving the documentation there. And maybe most importantly, we do have the Slack channel available for the community, so join the slack.kontena.io for any questions. And actually, I will be available sometime in the YouTube chat also after the session, but I highly recommend to join the Slack and ask any questions there, because there are many other people that can also answer the questions on Slack. Many other users and many other Kontena guys also hanging around there. So that's it from the Kontena 1.0 highlights point of view. Hope you enjoyed the session today. Hope to see you on upcoming meetups, either locally or these online meetups. Thank you. See you later.